Okay, so we're on Daf Lamed Gimel in Beitsa, just before the Mishnah at the bottom of Amud Aleph. And after a number of versions of a Machlokas Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes, we have a Gemora saying Hilchasa, which means the Halacha Lamaisa, the final conclusion, which practically the Gemora wants to give us the practical outcome of the Halacha. The actual halacha they were arguing about is the skewer, the wooden stick that's just naturally pointy. Can you use it to roast an animal with on Yom Tov? And Rav Nachman said no, Rav Sheshes said yes, and there were two versions of their machlokus, if they were talking about a dry stick, a wet stick. So now the Gemora, in my opinion, following the second version, is going to give the final outcome of that. And once he does that, Rashi follows up with his outlook of the halacha as well. Okay, so let's start with the Gemora of the Hilchasa, which is about halfway down the page, a little bit more than halfway down the page. Go ahead.
The Hilchasa, Rashta Shari, so the halacha regarding the dry stick is permitted, but tivat asur, and the wet stick is asur to use.
Right, so that means that if you find a stick that happens to be pointy and it's a dry one, you can use it to skewer the animal and roast it. It's not considered muksa, but the wet one we were saying you can't use because it's considered muksa. That's Rav Nachman's way of explaining it. So it turns like we're adopting Rav Nachman. Okay, now Rashi adds to this, continue. Hilchata. Okay, let's stop there. What's he saying?
But this halacha,
meaning this announcement of the halacha. Right. This announcement of the halacha that we find in our Gemora
follows the person who holds by muktzah, which is kavor.
No, see that's the verb. Ikva's the verb. So in an English sense, you should put that much earlier. It's been fixed into the Gemora. Yeah. This halachic psak has been fixed into the Gemora, has been sort of put in the Gemora in a permanent way. So they call it fixed, but it's been put into the Gemora only according to the opinion
of the person who holds by and
meaning that there is an Isser of Muksa, right? This is the famous Machlokas, Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda. Is there an Isser of Muksa? Is there not an Isser of Muksa? And even if today we talk about Muksa, that doesn't always mean we're following Rabbi Yehuda, by the way. Because we know even Rabbi Shimon, that we say he doesn't hold a Muksa, it's a bit of a misleading concept, because he does hold a Muksa. Rabbi Shimon does hold a Muksa, just not the kind of Muksa where it starts out not fit and becomes fit. That he feels, if it started out unfit, that doesn't mean you can't use it in the middle of Shabbos if it suddenly becomes fit. That's the machlokas. Can you use something that right now has a usage for you, but at the beginning of Shabbos Yom Tov it didn't? So that's called holding a muksa. Would say no. If it was the beginning of Yom Tov wasn't fit, and it's not fit, can't become fit in the middle. It remains unfit for the entire Yom Tov or Shabbos. But Rabbi Shimon would say no. Doesn't get locked into that psak. If it becomes fitting for some reason in the middle, then you're allowed to use it. Anything that's fitting, you're allowed to use. But something that's really not fitting, like a rock normally, or a branch, let's say for sure on Shabbos, even Rabbi Shimon would hold of, right? It's a bit misleading to say Rabbi Shimon doesn't hold a muksa. It means in the classic case where they argue, he feels we can be lenient. And in the classic case where they argue, Rabbi Yehuda says to be machmer. Right? Mm-hmm. Which means practically that their argument is on something that, like this stick, that pointy stick, it has a usage right now. I need to use it. I could use it as a skewer, but it started Shabbos as just a regular stick. It started Yom Tov, which is muksa. Right? But now I decided I can use it. Now it has a usage for me. All of a sudden I notice it's pointy, and I decide I need to skewer my roast. So I decide to use it. So right now, it could start being useful to me. So maybe I'm allowed to use it because it has a usage right now for me. That would be Rabbi Shimon's approach. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, no, I don't care if right now it's useful to you, but it started out Shabbos or Yom Tov without a proper usage. It has to remain that way for all of Yom Tov or Shabbos, right? You can't just switch in the middle. That's the main machlokus, but all sorts of other permutations. It could be there are cases that are clearly mutter that Rabbi Yehuda even agrees on that are mutter, and there are cases that are clearly usur that even Rabbi Shimon agrees is usur. So just to remember that we say this one holds a muksa, this one doesn't hold a muksa, which sounds like a very extreme position, both of them. It's really a limited point of view, meaning we don't really mean entirely he doesn't hold a muksa. He holds a muksa, but not every type of muksa that we're talking about here. The kind where it becomes useful in the middle of Shabbos or Yom Tov. And the same thing with Rabbi Yehuda. It sounds like an extreme statement, but it doesn't always mean like it seems to imply. There could be places where even Rabbi Yehuda agrees you're allowed to use something. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. But this particular case, where we're saying what? The wet one, the skewer that's too moist to really properly use in a regular fire, but there are some people who have huge fires that would be able to use it. So Reb Shesha said that's enough to make it non-muksa, and Reb Nachman says no, it's still muksa, because most people have small fires and you can't use it in a small fire. So Rashi says this whole discussion that we're saying you can't use a moist stick because it's not a proper utensil for most people who have small fires, so that's only according to Rabbi Yehuda, who says there's a problem with muksa, and this is going to be a problem with muksa, and if it's not fit for everybody, then it's a problem with muksa. He's saying, no, it's only Rabbi Yehuda who would say that. Aval Svira Lan. In this case, we hold, right? Because he's putting it from the first person plural, we hold, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so he's changing the perspective, even though the Gemora is certainly saying we pass like Rabbi Yehuda, but apparently there's other Gemoras elsewhere that Rashi could point to that hold like Rabbi Shimon. And most people would say, look, the Gemora here is clearly saying the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, and Rashi admits the Gemora here is saying that. Rashi's saying, but it's a bit deceptive because it's just saying for those who like Rabbi Yehuda, they go like Rav Nachman and say it's forbidden. Rashi says, but we really hold like Rabbi Shimon. Why? Rashi doesn't really prove that. See, Tosfos would probably prove it. Tosfos would probably bring proofs at this point. If this was a Tosfos, which it almost is. It's a long Rashi that enters a lot of topics and talks about a lot of controversial things, but still Rashi at this point doesn't bring a proof, even though there are some Rashis that do bring proofs to what he's saying here. It's conspicuously missing. So we just have to take Rashi's word for it. There's proofs for whatever that Rashi seemed to have up his sleeve that we really pass on like Rabbi Shimon.
Okay.
By the way, you could say one proof, just occurred to me, that one proof might be the beginning of the Masechta. What do you say? It's really the beginning of the Masechta. We have Maklokas Beis Shammai Beis Hillel if you're allowed to eat a Beitsa Shanol B'Yom Tov.
Shammai says yes, Beis Hillel says no.
And do you know why they argue?
Well, the brings.
You remember way back then, Shabbatai?
Depends on the chicken, where the chicken is considered one for laying and one for commercial.
So what's a kut?
Well, maybe you mean one for eating and one for laying eggs.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would it be? If it's for eating,
Should be allowed.
It's non-muksa, you can eat it.
okay, and if it's for laying eggs,
No,
so the problem is muksa.
it's muksa, yeah.
But anyone who went through the first sugya, which I encourage you to review it, would see that the Gemora starts with that approach, but
That's a different approach.
rejects that approach. Who takes that approach, by the way? Interestingly enough,
Rabba?
Rav Nachman. He's the one who tries to explain the Mishnah from the point of view of muksa and nolab, which means that Beis Hillel is saying it's forbidden because of muksa and nolab, right? But the Gemara rejects that approach to the Mishnah and ends up saying a number of approaches. 3 other rabbis. Rabbah, who says it's some kind of muksa d'oraisa, because a Suda of Shabbos has to be mukhan from mi'esmo, has to be already prepared from the day before. It's a special chiddush we learn from the man, where the Torah says you shall prepare the man from Yom Shishi, that we learn from there, according to Rabbah, that your Shabbos meals have to be prepared from the day before, and if this egg is hatched on a Yom Tov that was followed by following a Shabbos, so that means it was really prepared on Shabbos, because that's how eggs are formed. They're formed fully the day before, so Shabbos really prepared this Suda of Yom Tov. That's why it's muksa, according to Beitsa, says Rabbah. Okay?
Yes.
So he had to come up with this other explanation, which this different kind of muksa, deraisa, but the regular kind of muksa doesn't explain the Mishnah according to him. So that sounds like we don't paskin like muksa, right? If you don't explain the Mishnah that has to do with muksa, because muksa doesn't apply. Why does the muksa apply? Because we don't paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, paskin like Rabbi Shimon. That would be one proof, according to Rashi, that we don't pass like Rabbi Yehuda, pass like Rabbi Shimon, the way we chose to explain the Mishnah in the beginning of the Masechta. But how did the other 2 rabbis, Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yitzchak, how do they explain the Mishnah? Why is a Beitsa shenoldu b'yom tov aser?
Rabbi Yosef talks about the juice.
Because Rabbi Yosef
A
talks
gazera, that's similar to the juice that comes out of the...
That's
Rabbi Yitzchak, by the way. That's Rabbi Yitzchak's approach.
Rabbi Yosef says perish Nafshi.
But you have to say the full thing. It's a gazera.
What about
It's part of the gazera.
a fruit that fell from a tree? Right?
A fruit that falls off a tree, and this is a little bit similar to that, so it's included in the gezerah, but at the end of the day, it's only because of the gezerah.
We're not going.
No, the Gemora asks us a question with answers, so it's not a problem with gezerah. But according to Rav Yosef, it's a gezerah, the midrabanan, because it looks a little bit like mashkim shazavum. According to Rav Yosef, it looks a little bit like perus and noshrim. But is it because of muksa? No. What happened to muksa? Why did I just say because of muksa? Right? Why are they explaining it because of this? Makes it sound like the only problem is the gezerah, that it looks like a fruit that fell off a tree. It looks like liquid that came out of juice that came out of a fruit. But why don't they just explain it because of muksa? Right? That's how Shabbatai explained it a few minutes ago. But if it comes out of a chicken that's for laying eggs, it should be muksa. Right? Isn't that what you said? But why did Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yitzchak and even Rabbah not explain it like that? So Rashi could argue that that's a proof that we don't hold it muksa. We hold like Rabbi Shimon. Therefore, we don't want to explain Beis Shammai like holding like Rabbi Yehuda that there's a problem with muksa. We'd rather explain Beis Hillel is going like Rabbi Shimon. Okay, that could be a proof of Rashi. He doesn't say what his proofs are. But it just says we hold like Rabbi Shimon. Right? And since Shabbatai won't be here on Sunday, I assume he's going to chazer most of the Masechta that we've learned till now. See if you come up with a few more proofs of how did Rashi know that we hold like Rabbi Shimon in Muksa. Okay? Yeah. Okay, weiter.
Okay.
We hold like Rabbi Shimon regarding Muksa.
במוקצה בין בדרבה שהיינו מתכוון.
Right.
With a matter that there was no intention.
Okay, but Bain this and Bain that means...
Both this and that.
Right, so he's saying, we not only hold like Rabbi Shimon in this Maklokas Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon of Muksa, we also hold like Rabbi Shimon and Maklokas Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon regarding this other whole issue, Davar Sheina Miskava. Now, Davar Sheina Miskava means, let's just get it straight, because perhaps yesterday I didn't explain it well enough, I'm sorry, but a person is doing an activity, like dragging a chair across the lawn, that his main intention is what? To move the chair from point A to point B. He has no interest in creating a furrow, right? Which is like plowing the lawn. In fact, he's probably going to get in trouble from his mother or from his wife if he ruins the lawn, right? So he's certainly not interested in getting it, but if it ends up creating a furrow, he did end up doing a malacha. Because that's what plowing is. You create a furrow in a place where seeds can be grown, That's harisha. That's plowing. One of the 39 malachas. But his intention was what? To relocate the furniture.
It wasn't to plow, just to move the furniture.
That's right.
But
So his intention was for, we'll call it a mutter activity, moving furniture, but he ended up causing B. But that wasn't his intention. So that's called davar she'eino miskaven. He did a malacha without really intending for it to happen. Now, the question isn't chayiv or aser. It isn't chayiv or pater, right? What do you know what the machlokus is? Whether it is pater or aser. I'm sorry, mutter or aser. You know, on Shabbos, there's two different kinds of considerations. Is it mutter to do? And sometimes even if it's not mutter, but if a person actually does it, would he be chayiv having done it on Shabbos? Right? Let's say he did it b'shogeg, he'd have to bring a korban, or if he did it b'mezi, he'd get kares, or even skila if he did it with warning. So those are two major questions. We don't always mix the two, right? Sometimes I'm only asking if it's mutter or aser, and I know it's not a malacha d'oraisa. So in this case, the machlokas Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda and davar she'eino miskaven, they use the lashon of mutter or aser. Okay? Now, without getting into the implications of that, but practically that means what? According to Rabbi Shimon, what?
It's mutter, right?
He holds mutter. Just like he's makel in muksa, he's makel here as well.
Yes, so you will hold the opposite of asa, just like he holds mutter.
Which means, if I go to a rabbi and ask him, I need to move this chair across the lawn, am I allowed to drag it or do I have to lift it?
He'll tell you how to lift it.
So if he knows what Rashi is saying over here, that we paskin like Rabbi Shimon, so it should be what? Should be?
Mutter.
Mutter. Should be mutter, right? So that means not only if he did it, we say he's not chayiv v'chatas, but he can actually go up to the rabbi and ask him if he's allowed to do it. He should be allowed to do it. You should be allowed to drag a chair across the lawn, right? I'm not saying to follow that advice, by the way. I don't want to get into trouble that you tell someone the Rabbi Fairman told you're allowed to drag a chair across the lawn. But that's what it should mean according to Rabbi Shimon. There's two things you have to consider though. Maybe Rashi's wrong. Maybe the Shulchan Aruch doesn't pass like Rabbi Shimon. Maybe Rashi did, but maybe the Shulchan Aruch or even the Mishnah Brewer was not going to come out that way. I don't know. That's a question you can look up over Shabbos. Do we hold like Rashi's claiming that in davar she'eino miskaven, dragging a chair across the lawn, the Mishnah Berurah passes it's mutter like Rabbi Shimon, or aser like Rabbi Yehuda? Okay, and by the way, even according to Rabbi Shimon, we said if it's a psik reisha, which means what?
Indeed.
Meaning it's bound to happen. It's such a heavy chair, it's for sure going to cause a charitz, cause a furrow. And even Rabbi Shimon agrees what?
It's aser.
It's aser, right? So even the only case we're talking about is not where it for sure won't make a charitz, because then of course it would be mutter. And it's not talking about where we're for sure create a charitz, because that would be aser even according to Rabbi Shimon. It's some kind of middle of the road case, where it's not guaranteed you'll make a charitz, but it could likely happen, right? There we have a maklok, as Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda are allowed to drag the chair and create the charitz. And by the way, there's many other cases that are similar to that, okay, where you're not necessarily going to be for sure doing a malacha, but you're doing activity A, which could lead to the other thing, right? Like what about closing a door to the bathroom, and there's a fly inside? Ever heard that, Shiloh?
Trapping.
You're like trapping the animal, right? Which you're not allowed to do. But there's all sorts of halachas in that, so it's not so...
We discussed this before in the beginning of the third parak about...
Very good, that's right, we talked about trapping animals, that's right. That's the name of the
parak. It
parak,
has a
yeah.
roof, then you're not allowed to do it. It doesn't have a roof, you're allowed to close it.
Okay, so but in a bathroom, theoretically, it's completely enclosed.
This is a door. This is a door. A dorah.
A door?
A dorah. That's that wild bird that is not bound by boundaries.
Okay, so, yeah, I know what you're talking about, okay. Let's say a fly, a regular fly. That happens all the time. You go into a bathroom, there's this fly flying around, he's looking for food. right? They like eating whatever appears in the bathroom, unfortunately. So, right? And you surely don't want it in that bathroom. You'd rather get it out of the window, which, by the way, is one of the eights. Open a window, let it fly out. Then you for sure can close the regular door of the bathroom. But if they're all closed, and you just, or let's say there's no windows to open up, so then it's a big shiloh if you can close it. But just like over there in that shiloh, we said it's dependent if when I close the door, could I catch it in one swoop? Remember we talked about that? When you put the deer in the enclosure, could I catch it in one swoop, or do you need to run around a bit? So therefore over here, with they talk about a fly, usually we go into a regular bathroom, and you don't feel like you can catch that fly in one swoop. Right? The more you get close, even if you like to go slowly, very rare that you can grab it in one swoop. So it might not be a problem at all, or maybe it depends if it's a smaller bathroom or a larger bathroom. But the basic idea is I'm closing a door now because I want privacy, not because I want to trap a fly. So this should be a davar she'eino miskaven. But if he's for sure trapped in there, then it's a psik reisha. Then even Reb Shimon say it's us. But if it's not so sure, he could get out, but he could be trapped, or maybe I'm not sure of how big is called, big enough and small enough to call it an enclosure or trap. Then that might be a suffix where you say, now it's a davar she'eino miskaven. In the meantime, okay. So that just means in that area of the halacha, where Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda argue about davar she'eino miskaven being asur or mutter, or to Rashi, the halacha would be what? And it would therefore be mutter. Okay, so Rashi just said an extra halacha which has nothing to do with our sugya, but davar she'eino miskaven. But the main thing that he wanted to start with was the question of muksa.
Was Rabbi Yehuda told Rabbi Shimon by Chai?
I don't believe so. I think. Let's see. I think Rabbi Yochanan and Zakkai had 5 talmidim, including Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Meir.
I thought Rabbi Akiva was Rabbi Shimon's Talmud.
Maybe Rabbi Akiva.
Akiva had 5.
Had 5, and that's what we say that he went down and created 5 new talmidim after the deaths on Sfiras Omer. In any event, okay, so Rashi is postulating those issues, okay. Now he has a third halacha, which is just sort of clearing the air on different issues, but it's, again, not even related to our sugya, which we began talking about muksa and the skewer.
You could look it up in here if you want.
Huh?
You could look it up in here,
You want to look it up? It was a talmidim.
the back.
There's a chart, the fold-out charts. One side is usually the Amoraim, one side is the Tanoim. We're wondering about the Tanoim, who were Rabbi Shimon or Rabbi Yehuda talmidim of.
It's right. It's the fold-out one.
More in so,
Usually at the top it'll say if it's the Amoraim or the Tanoim on the chart.
I think it's the first page.
so that's annoying.
So probably good to find Rabbi Akiva, then I think they're talmidim of Rabbi Akiva, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, here they are, Akiva.
So who is talmidim?
Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Rabbi Elazar bar Yaakov, Rabbi Nechemia, Rabbi Elazar ben Shmuel, and Rabbi Meir.
Okay, so Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda, who were they talmidim of?
Rabbi Akiva.
Who were? Both of them?
Yeah, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Rabbi Yehuda bar Eloi, right?
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so they're both talmidim of Rabbi Akiva, so it does make it a bit, difficult to understand how they could come out with such radically different sheets as they both have the same Rebbe, but I guess it's possible. Okay, so now those two machlokas seen are between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. The question of whether there's an isser of muksa, as we explained what that means, and whether there's a problem with davar she'eino miskaven, whether it's asur or mutter according to what that is. So we've handled 2 major issues, and Rashi's put his sock down on both of them. Now, third issue.
וקרא יהודה במכשירי אוכל נפש וכולו ישרו. And regarding Rabbi Yehuda and his Machshari Ochel Nefesh, they're all permitted.
No.
Yeah?
He's not saying v'kulhu sharu in the sense that it's not the end of the sentence, by the way. It's a new, that part is a new sentence.
Bain, what's it again? His Chazria? Bain Semich Kedorot. So between the skewer and placing in the barrels, right? So that's the bit that I got mixed up with.
Oh, till there's okay?
Yeah.
That's good. That's progress over yesterday.
Yeah, I
Great.
had trouble with this.
So, now, after he went through three different things where he wanted to clear up the halacha, muksa like Rabbi Shimon, davar she'eino miskaven like Rabbi Shimon, and now machshiri achol nefesh, preparing, let's say, implements for cooking, but not the actual cooking. That, in the end, he's saying we possibly like Rabbi against the Chachamim, not against Rabbi Shimon, by the way, against the Chachamim. It's a bigger kiddush. Here we're possibly like Rabbi Yehuda against an entire Chachamim. Okay, but there are proofs that we saw even recently in the Gemora that were mashma that way as well. Just 1 second. Okay, so now he's going to go into other shilas. Like we've already had three major things he discussed, three major topics. Who do we possibly like? Now he's going on and discussing other things which came up in the sugya. Right, so that's the kulu. It's a new sentence.
I see. The Kulu Sharia and they're all permitted by the Nigaz to listen?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Bain Chazara.
Chizra, that thing about the skewer.
Right. Bain Smach.
Smichas,
Kadrot.
kaderos. The whole
Placing
thing.
on the barrels.
Yeah, but I think that's the last thing that he mentioned over here where he talked about because then he talks about hakafas chavios.
That's right.
Okay, so smichas kaderos is where you wanted to put the pot on the...
On the barrels.
No, that was called hakafas chavios. That's the next thing.
Smichas Kederis
No,
is...
smichas kaderos is what? It said in the Mishnah, ein somchim as a kadera,
It's a Kedera, the bikas.
the bikas. So that's what Rashi's saying. The
The
Mishnah said you can't do it. Rashi's saying you can do it.
Can't put on a piece of wood, right?
And Rashi's saying you can do it. You know why Rashi's saying you can do it? Because he'd say all those people said it's usher, it's because they held of...
Right.
Just a second. Remember how Rashi explained it in the Mishnah? Why are you not allowed to use a bikas? Because a bikas is a piece of wood. And what's the only thing you're allowed to use wood for on Shabbat, on Yom Tov? Burning. And is bikas in smichas kaderos the usage that's permitted?
No.
No. So it should be in that, it should be considered muksa. That's what Rashi said in the Mishnah. But if you're going like Rashi said before, in muksa we pass like Rabbi Shimon, then we should be able to use it, right? Which actually we saw. We saw the Beitsa before that said Rabbi Shimon Matir, right? At the top of our page here. Right? The 6th line of the Gemora, Rabbi Shimon Matir. See it?
Yes.
So Rashi's saying in that is the halacha, because that's a question of you passing like muksa or not. Okay, so that we passing like it's mutter. It's really mutter. Okay, so far two things that we thought were us are really mutter. And keep going, and also hakafas chavios, even the case where somebody wanted to surround the pot with the barrels. Now we said that's a problem of oil or rye. And we said before, we're only willing to be matrid if it's covered of brios or if you do a shinui. But Rashi seems to be saying now you could do it. For some reason, not a problem of all around.
Temporary things.
Huh?
Temporary dwellings.
It doesn't seem to be a problem because he's letting you do it. He's letting you put the two chavios on either side of the fire and put your pot on top.
Right.
Okay?
Madurata.
Madurata, that case of Madura, which is also Shiloh Ohel. The Kadera, which is a case that was brought up in the Gemora. It said V'chein Kadera at the top of the page. And Rashi learned us talk about putting
I thought the Maduras were different. Whether you could light from the top or whether you could light from the bottom. It didn't have anything to do with the Kadera.
Huh? Which case?
The Maduros.
What about it?
He was talking about whether you can light from the bottom or whether you
No,
can...
not light from the bottom.
prepare it from the bottom or prepare it from the top.
Because then the preparation is putting up a wall of wood.
Right. But it's not related to the Kaderas. I don't think it had anything to do with the Kaderas. I think you have to be in pot to understand this.
We need to start pot. What does that mean, pot?
Mm-hmm.
Pot.
Okay.
What is it?
I'll tell you when you're older. So, yes, so... Umarim, and all these things that were said.
Yes, all these things that are acid.
Did you finish that Rashi yesterday?
We did.
Ma'ala Talmidei Rav Ami. Rav Sabar Le Keravi Yehuda. Keravi
Well, no.
Regarding Muksa, Rashi says we pass like Rabbi Shimon that it's mutter. Regarding Darushana Miskav, we pass them like Rabbi Shimon that it's mutter. Regarding Makshiri Achol Nafshi, passing like Rabbi Yehuda that it's mutter. Call that the trifecta. Three major halachas that we can be makel on. Right? If anyone ever accuses the rabbis of being machmer, tell them, see Rashi and Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph, where he describes three major halachas that we're allowed to be makel in. At the very end, he says there's a bunch of other things also. The Chizra, the Smichas Kederos, the Kafas Chavios, the Madurata, and the Kadera.
Yep.
Let's finish the Rashi. V'kol Amoraim.
And all these things that are said.
No, Amoraim.
Oh, Amoraim. And all the Amoraim,
all the rabbis who are from the period of time of the Amoraim,
Asuru et Erev,
who made these things forbidden.
Right.
Well, there's Rabbi Yehuda, right?
Right.
And Reb Nachman, all these things, right? Lumala was Lumala here means further up, in like beforehand in the sugya. The answer is Talmidei de Rav Havu.
Talmidim of Rav.
Talmidim of Rav. Who cares? The answer is you have to know that what?
Rav Saval no Rabbi Yehuda. He doesn't hold like Rabbi Yehuda.
They are. All these Talmidim above, all these Amoraim above who said it's Asr, they are Talmidim of Rav.
He holds like Rabbi
La. Sover La.
Saval.
That Rav, what? Sover La, he holds Ki
Rabbi
Yehuda Muksa. Okay, so it's not the clearest sentence in the world, but basically Rashi is saying all these halachas we can be makelim because we can attribute those halachas to people we don't paskin like. Certain halachas can we contribute to Rabbi Yehuda, others, right? So Rashi's cleared up what the Gemora said. It wants to give us a proper psak. Rashi's saying that's not going to be sufficient. I have to clear the air. Because Anan Kaimalan Kirebi Shemen, right? Which he means not only in Muksa, he means in Davar Shenem Miskaven, in Makshir Ochel Nefesh he threw in also, and all these other things in the Sugya. But it sounds like one of the things has to do even with Muksa in this list. But when we were learning the list, we didn't all learn that they were because of Muksa. I thought they were because of Ohel or some other thing. It's a bit confusing there. Okay, shall we go on the Gemora then?
Yep.
Who's reading the Gemora?
To read? Should I read the Rashi's?
Okay, where were we reading from? Ishalo Tepanes in the year 18. So a woman shouldn't enter a storage house of wood, a little named Od, to take for herself a twig. Od,
Oid.
Wood. It's a twig. Od shen neshaver asu.
Nishbar.
Nishba. Od shen nishba asu la haski
Mosiko.
yontov. So a broken twig is not allowed to be litten on yontov. Not a value to burn it. Right?
Can't use it for firewood anymore.
Right.
Why?
Lafi she mis.
It's the plural of the verb.
That they are burnt.
It's a plural verb. It means more than one person doing the action.
Okay.
We are learning.
Okay, we are learning.
No, that's if it's learning. This is the verb masik, which we know what masik means.
Yes, to burn.
It's the plural of that verb.
They burn.
They or we, however you say a halacha. If you want to tell someone the halacha, we say we are allowed to do this or we're not allowed to do that, right? Sometimes you say it in the plural first person, sometimes you say it in the third person. They, Jews, are not allowed to do this or whatever.
The kalim, vessels.
Burning, right? The second.
To use as firewood, let's say. We're allowed to burn as firewood what?
In vessels.
Proper vessels. But
masikin
shibrei.
Kalim.
Right.
And not allowed to burn them in broken vessels.
In? When you put a piece of wood in the fire, what do you call that? What are you doing to the wood?
Burning.
So where's the word in come?
V'ein miskanim v'tei b'sharei.
Yeshiva.
B'shivrei.
Okay, now the base can double up as which word? Either in or with. Like for example, how do you translate b'med madlikin? You know the first Mishnah and the second parak of right? Shabbos, the Gemora, the Mishnah starts out b'med madlikin uv'ma ein madlikin.
They burn.
B'meh means like with what are we allowed to light, and with what are we not allowed to light on Shabbos? Which fuels are we allowed to use, and which fuels are we not allowed to use when we light a fire on, or we light a candle on Shabbos? Okay, that's the plural verb saying we either can do something, meaning it's mutter, or we can't do something, meaning it's asur. And the base means with. The kind of fuel you're using. I'm lighting with this, right? Meaning this is my fuel. This is what I want to use. So we don't use the word in, we use the word with. And translate into English.
So we're not allowed to burn with vessels, and
We are allowed.
oh, you are allowed, but not with broken vessels.
Okay, so say it in your own way. Say it in your own vernacular, if you will.
We are able to burn wood in vessels, but we're not allowed to burn wood in broken vessels.
Right. In other words, if you have a
What vessels
implement,
are you talking about?
let's say a chair, a wooden chair.
Yeah.
I have an extra wooden chair and I'm running out of firewood. Can I just throw it into the fire on Yom Tov? Why not?
Because it's a way to be served.
But it says here, Masikin, we are allowed to burn kalim. You're allowed to burn kalim. So why are you saying you're not?
We're not putting a candy on top of a fire or something.
That's called Masikin bekalim.
How do you burn it if the chair's broken? You've done this once before.
No, it's the other way around.
Yeah?
You just read it. Read it again. Please, gentlemen, read the Gemora again. 101 times, so it's clear. Masikin, how do we translate Masikin?
You burn.
We do burn. We are allowed to burn. What?
The kalim.
Kalim. Full kalim. We are allowed to burn full kalim, i.e. a regular chair.
What's the burn in front of the kalim?
I just told you, with. When you talk about, I'm using something as fuel, as firewood, I'm saying I'm burning the fire with this thing. I'm using that as my fuel. It's like saying I'm driving with petrol, I'm cooking with oil. It's the thing which is being used to fuel the fire. So let's translate it again. Masikin bekalim, which translates as we are allowed to burn our fires with complete vessels, i.e. a complete chair, for example.
How do we know that it's complete?
Because it doesn't say anything about it being broken. But the next thing is about it being broken. So when it says you can't do something, it says broken. So I assume the one you are allowed to use because it's not broken. And that's exactly what it wants to do. It wants to draw a contrast. And probably knows there's a bunch of people like you walking around who think the opposite. That if it's a complete chair, what? I'm going to throw a complete chair into the fire? That's bal tashchis. And if it's broken, fine. What else can I do with it? It's broken. Right? But is that right?
Yeah.
No. Am I allowed to take a broken chair and put it into the fire?
No.
It says you're not.
No, why not?
It's a broken vessel.
Therefore,
You're not allowed to do it. It's a second argument.
well, since I know you're a mature man who knows that circular arguments are not the proper way to go, can you try to give a different answer?
Why can it?
Do you remember the sugi that we're in, gentlemen?
Yes.
Why are you jumping so far away? We're in a sugya that's been discussing this concept for quite some time. What we're allowed to burn, what we're not allowed to burn, and all that kind of stuff. What's the sugya generally been talking about?
Shavin is a cheres, right?
We talked about the skewer. We talked about a bikas. What's the sugya? Rashi just finished going through an entire discussion about it. The Gemora says we pass in one way. Rashi says no, we don't, because this whole sugya has to do with, and in that we pass in like Rabbi Shimon. Muksa. Is that so hard, guys? We've been talking about muksa here. Remember?
Then why is a complete change of muksa?
So think about it. A chair is not muksa because it has a usage.
But you didn't think to burn it though.
I don't care what I intended to do. It's not muksa. Objectively, it's a kli. It's not muksa. It has a function. It's not muksa. That part you get.
Yeah.
You just don't get that. Who in the world would want to throw a nice chair into a fire? Okay, so we'll go examine his head after Yom Tov. We'll take him to Marina's, the doctor, and we'll evaluate him. Maybe he needs to have a little electric shock therapy or something. Get his brain back. But it's not muksa. That part we understand. From this sugya, we're now well acquainted with that part of the thing, right? We can use things that are not muksa. We can't use things that are muksa. According to Rebbe
Shimon.
No! According to Rabbi Shimon, I can use even other things.
Yehuda.
According to Rabbi Yehuda, we're talking. Who holds of muksa.
Yep.
Not allowed to eat when you give a wrong answer. So only if you give a good answer, then you can cook it. So just give a good answer. Next question. So what's wrong with shivrei kelim?
It's muktzah.
Muksa. Why is it muksa? When did it break?
Broke on Yom Tov.
Must be talking about where it broke on Yom Tov. If it
Before,
broke before Yom Tov,
it wasn't muktzah.
then it wouldn't be muksa. Why? Because before Yom Tov, I'm thinking I'm going to use that as firewood.
Now, like,
Broken
well,
kli, probably think before Yom Tov, I'll use it as firewood. When we're talking about it where it broke on Yom Tov, then it can't change jobs in the middle of Yom Tov, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Right? Therefore, you can't use it. Okay? So what's the entire statement? A woman's not allowed to go into the woodshed to get this oud because it is what?
muktzah.
Muksa. Why? It's a piece of wood.
Never mind. Broken.
No, that's the second part, where it says if it broke, you're not allowed to use it as firewood. But the first thing was she was going to use it as firewood. What was she going to use it for?
He told him. For
Some kind of stick to manage the fire, but not to actually burn the fire.
stoke the fire.
Start the fire or to move the fire around,
Turn the
perhaps.
fire.
Rashi calls it an ud l'tanur. La'asos ud l'tanur. Some kind of thing that is used with your oven.
Poker. Poker.
Maybe a poker, or maybe it's also used to light the fire, but it doesn't matter. You're not using it as fuel for the fire. So according to Rebbe Yehuda, if you're not really using it as fuel for the fire, you're not masikin with it, then it is muktzah. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But if you went into the woodshed to want to use it as firewood, would you be allowed?
Yes.
Yes. And that's why the second halacha is attached to the first halacha, because if you want to use it as a firewood, that's fine. Just like a kli, any kli you're allowed to use as firewood. That's the second one. Masikim b'kelim, but not if it broke. Not masikim b'shivrei kelim, but all according to Rebbe Yehuda. Because these are all like parts of the halacha of muksa.
Yep.
So, now the Gemora says, who's reading the Gemora?
Okay. Lamir Mara, the Rava.
First word is what? Can you say it again? Lamemra, actually. So what is Lamemra?
If you want to say.
No, it's not if you want to say.
Let us say.
No, it's also not let us say. That would be Nema or something like that.
It's a question, right?
It is a question, but doesn't stand by itself. It's the beginning of a question.
Let us say.
No, that would be Nema or something like that, or Lema. This is actually, just talk about without the aleph at the end. Lamemar. Do you know what Lamemar would be?
To say.
To say.
Meaning to say.
So, with the aleph on the end, it becomes a Gemora question like the real word, to say, but it makes it into a question. Does that mean to say? Does what you just said mean to imply, in other words, mean to say the following? We're trying to ask a question. That what you just said seems to imply the following. So it's like saying, does that mean to say, I even use that expression in English. Someone says or does something, so we look at them and we go, does that mean to say that you hold blah blah blah? Right? Right? So he just made a statement, Rabbi Rava, about using an oud under only certain circumstances for fuel, etc., and other things that you're allowed to use for fuel and not. And it boils down to a question of muksa, and obviously only according to Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemora says, if Rava could make that kind of a statement that's only going according to Rabbi Yehuda, Lamemra, does that mean to say?
Does that mean to say?
Would that really imply what it seems to imply? Are we really allowed to conclude what it would seem to imply, that that would mean what?
The Rava Rabbi Yehuda.
Spirale. In other words, now the Rava said statement A, are we forced to admit that he holds like Rabbi Yehuda? Lamemra, does that really mean to say that he holds like Rabbi Yehuda? Which, by the way, does that support what Rashi said before? What did Rashi say? Who do we hold like? Rabbi Shimon. So if we find Rava making a statement that seems to be like Rabbi Yehuda, would that be good or bad, according to Rashi?
It's bad.
Be bad. So we would say, does that mean we have to admit that Rava passes like Rabbi Yehuda against the halacha? According to Rashi, it's perfect. That's really a question. That's really bothering us. Because we hold that the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon. It would be very sad if we had to admit that one of the greatest rabbis who ever lived holds like Rabbi Yehuda. The way Rashi's learning, it's good, because Rashi said a minute ago we pass like Rabbi Shimon. Right?
Yep.
So then it makes sense for the Gemora to be bothered and to be wondering, do we really have to admit then, based on what Rava just said, that he's holding like Rabbi Yehuda, which would be against the halacha, which would be shver? Do we have to say that? Does that mean to say that we have to say that? Admit that?
Sorry, and in my smoky thinking at the moment, why Rava?
He's the one who made the statement. Dorosh Rava. We're dealing with his statement about the oud.
Oh, I see.
And also he ended up making he referred to the entire halacha about burning kalim and not shivrei kalim. The whole statement, all of his statements together were all based on the concept of muksa. Like Rashi explained before. Most of the things in our sugi are coming out because of muksa, which means we'd only really hold like it if we held like Rabbi Yehuda, but not if we hold like Rabbi Shimon. So now we have a statement of Rava that's also implying that he holds like Rabbi Yehuda, but according to Rashi, we don't really hold like Rabbi Yehuda, so that's shver. So Gemora is bringing that up. Wow. Did he really say that? Is it really true that he said that? Because it would seem to say then that he holds like Rabbi Yehuda. Do we have to admit that Rava holds like Rabbi Yehuda? That would be very shver.
Oh, but there's a lot of Rabbi Yehuda.
Because Rashi said the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon. Whatever his proofs were, but Rashi seemed to have a bunch of proofs because he said it without even blinking. The halacha anan, Rabbi Shimon's sphere along. We all like Rabbi Shimon, Rashi said. You didn't even bring any proofs. But from here you see another proof to Rashi. Because if the Gemora is asking, do we have to admit that he's holding like Rabbi Yehuda? It sounds like we don't want to admit that because it's against the halacha. But it seems like we have to. So we're up the creek. We have to come up with an answer. So what does the Gemara say? Do we have to say also like Rabbi Yehuda that Svira le de Isle Muksa? Now, but we even have a proof that Rava doesn't hold like Rabbi Yehuda, which makes it even doubly shver. Not only we hold like Rashi said before, the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon, so it's fair to say that Rava holds like Rabbi Yehuda. But we even have a statement of Rava that seems to say the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon. What? L'shamei.
He said to his servant, or his helper,
Right.
Tivili bar Ababaza.
Right.
Rise for me a deck or a goose.
Right. Probably he's talking on Yom Tov.
Peshari Ma'ayer.
Shadi.
Peshadi Ma'ayer.
Me'eha.
The bowels.
Right.
The Shonra. I don't know what the Shonra.
Cat.
Is that a cat?
What's Shadi?
It's throat.
Throat. So he's saying, please shek for me and roast for me a duck. And if you're wondering what to do with the entrails, throw them to the cat. Because they're not fit for a human being. Frek the Gemora. No, that's going to be an answer. What is the Gemora asking by bringing the story? Let's review.
Okay, so
Rava said you're not allowed to use the oud and all these other things, and the reason was because he holds up muksa. Says the Gemora, do we have to say he holds like Rabbi Yehuda? But we have a statement of Rava that's not like Rabbi Yehuda. What's the statement of Rava that's not like Rabbi Yehuda? When he said to his shamis to roast for him a duck and throw the entrails to a cat. Now, what part of that is not like Rabbi Yehuda?
It's muktzah, right? The entrails are not something we ever use.
The entrails should be considered muksa. Very good. We'll have to see in Rashi exactly why. But let's say it's muksa, and yet he's telling his shamis, who's a Jew, not a non-Jew, to what?
Throw it to the cat.
Throw it to the cats. In order to throw something to a cat, you have to do what?
You have to cut it out.
Cutting it out is one thing, that's right, and you also have to lift it up, right? You're like lifting it up and then throwing it to the cat, right? You didn't just say leave it to the cat, you said throw it to the cat. That means you can hold it in your hand and you're going to throw it. How can you hold it in your hand? It's muksa, and he's a Jew, right? That's why we saw, for example, there was a whole question of if you have a table that's full of muksa, how are you supposed to clear the table? Remember that? The bones and the klipos and everything is not so simple.
shake it off.
Right? There was a Maklokas Beishai Beisil about how to deal with that. But in any event,
That's where the name for youngster comes from. Shakers.
right, well that's also what they do to the criminals, they do a shakedown. Now, so the point is, do we have a statement here of Rava that would support a theory that he holds like Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbi Shimon?
Shimon.
Looks like he holds like Rabbi Shimon. And that's why the Gemora said before, do we have to say, he said the whole thing about oud, which implies he holds like Rabbi Yehuda, but he said to his shaman something that implies he holds like Rabbi Shimon. What's going on? Something's got to give. Right? We need a shakedown. So the Gemora answers, no, Hasam.
Over there.
Now what do you think over there is? Which cases can be considered over there? You know what over there is usually?
The Ud.
Not where we started. We start at point A, and then we bring in something from the outside to ask a question. That's the there. So what's the here and what's the there? What would you think?
Ud is the there and the...
No, Oud is what we started with. We started with Rava's statement about Oud, and then he said, but over there he said something to his shamus which doesn't agree with that.
Here is Ud.
Right? Here's the Oud, and over there it was the question that we brought in from elsewhere to ask a question from what he said to his shamus. So in the answer we say over there, we're trying to explain what he said to his shamus. You know why he's told his shamus he's allowed to pick it up? Even if he holds like Rabbi Yehuda, you know why he said it? Because
Kijk aan de
misrichi. It's what we call in modern Hebrew masriach.
Yeah, it's bad smell.
Right. Now, bad smell tends to come from things that are rotting or starting to go, right? So if you have shechted it yesterday, then already the entrails are starting to smell yesterday. Now, I think in the Havamina we thought he was telling his shamas to roast a duck that hasn't been shechted yet. And part of the answer is no. They had already shechted it the day before, and those entrails were already smelled from the day before. I.e., it'll be a little bit like the case we talked about. You're not allowed to burn broken chairs. We said, but that's only if it broke on Yom Tov. But if it had broken the day before, then you'd probably be allowed to, because then from the day before, your mind was already set on it as probably being firewood. It's only if it happens in the middle and you want to change it from being a regular chair to firewood that we say no. So here also, it already started to smell from yesterday. Then we say something we said a number of times during the Masechta, Daite Iluye. His das, not goes up. It's like Aleha. His das is upon it. Right? That's what muksa is all about. If your das is to use something from the day before, then it's not muksa. But if your das is not to use something from the day before, then it is muksa. Right? According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's all a question is what was your mindset when Yom Tov came in, or when Shabbos came in? Right?
Right.
So according to now, we're saying you can say that Rava really holds like Rabbi Yehuda. So now it's turning out a bit different than what Rashi said before. Rashi said we hold like Rabbi Shimon. Here we have proof that in the end the Gemora is saying, you're right, Rava passes like Rabbi Yehuda. Why did he tell his shamas to throw the entrails to the cats? Because it wasn't shechted on Yom Tov, and that would have been a problem with Muksa.
Shechted before.
Shechted the day before. So when Yom Tov came in, you know what he was thinking in the back of his mind? This is fantastic cat food. Yeah, you can already smell it a bit, it's going off, which I don't even think you need to say that, but okay. It certainly makes it a stronger theory that he thought already then, as Yom Tov was coming in, or before Yom Tov, that what? He's hoping to use this as cat food. So therefore, of course, just like the chair that broke Erev Yom Tov, you're allowed to use it for firewood on Yom Tov, and we said you couldn't use a broken chair, it's only meant if it broke on Yom Tov. Here also, if the entrails became suddenly available and now you want to use it for cat food, we say no, it's already muksa. Because when Yom Tov came in, it wasn't cat food. But if it was already from before and you were thinking to use it, then of course, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, this is the part I was saying to you before, we say Rabbi Yehuda holds a muksa, but it's not that everything's muksa. If something has a function, it's not muksa. Now, do I say entrails have a function? Yes, they're cat food, right? If they're starting to go bad, especially. But maybe even without that, but that's a question why I had to mention that it's smelling. But, right, maybe only if they smell they go to the cats, or that means if they're starting to smell, he thought about it, right? You have to have that he was thinking about it. So, either way, it has a use before Yom Tov. So something has a use before Yom Tov. Do you think it becomes muksa? Even according to Rabbi Yehuda holds a muksa. No, that's the whole thing of Rabbi Yehuda. If something at the beginning of Yom Tov didn't have a function, or had another function entirely, and then in the middle of Yom Tov or Shabbos it just suddenly became usable in something else, you can't use it. It's already been locked into some other thing. But if before Yom Tov or Shabbos it was useful for what you want to use it for now, I want to use it now as cat food. It was already ready for that era of Yom Tov. Fine. Even Rabbi Yehuda agrees. It's what? It's going to be mutter. It's not going to be muksa. What?
Not a technical question.
Yeah.
The word Hashem over there.
Awesome, right?
Okay. But we're actually talking about something now, about go make me a duck.
Yeah, but that was an extra thing that we brought in from the outside. It was a story that was supposed to contradict the original statement of Rava. We had Rava making an original statement about the Oud.
Right.
Then the Gemora said, is it possible he really said that? We have him on record somewhere else as saying the opposite, about the entrails. Right? That thing was being brought in from the outside.
How do we know that?
Because we started a discussion, imagine, I'm starting a discussion right here. And when I bring in a question, it's bringing it from elsewhere. That's how the discussion really is. We're talking about a specific subject, and when we bring in a question, it's always from elsewhere. That's the outside, so to speak. It's an outside story that we know about him. Like we would say in America, he brought it in from left field. Way out in left field, somewhere that nobody really knew about this. All of a sudden, I'm bringing it in as a surprise piece of evidence. But the main discussion was the Oud question. He's talked about Oud. He seems to be saying something about Oud. That's our main focus right now. Did he really say that, or how could that fit in? But I have a story from elsewhere that makes it outside, right? Elsewhere is outside, right? So whatever we're talking about, whatever we're starting is the here. Whatever's brought in as an outside question from elsewhere is there. Now, are you going to go there?
No, we're going to go to.
So you're staying for a few minutes?
I'll stay until.
Okay, so we can do some Rashis if you want.
You're going to carry on?
Well, I think we have to do the Rashis here.
I can only stay 5 minutes. I just made it home yesterday by the skin of my
teeth.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I would hate for you to lose the skin of your teeth. Okay. So let's go with the Rashis, perhaps. Darash Rava. That was the whole thing about the Oud, going into the woodshed to try to get the Oud, etc. He said you can't. And that was all Rashi says. He's already saying the punchline. That's all because he holds like Rabbi Yehuda, which the Gemora is going to bring up later. We really have to say he holds like Rabbi Yehuda, but look what he said to his Shabbos. So that's the starting point, Rashi said, that he seems to be making a statement like Rabbi Yehuda. And he told about going into a deer.
A deer eitzim means a storage house.
Yeah. Now, in our Gemora it says deer eitzim, so I don't think Rashi had that girsa. Because why would he have to say deer eitzim if the Gemora says deer eitzim? Anyhow. Okay, weiter.
Oud.
What is an Oud?
Eitz lasos Oud.
The tanur. There's something called Oud l'tanur, and I want to get a piece of wood to be my Oud l'tanur. So whatever Oud l'tanur means, to start a fire, to stoke the fire, whatever it is. It's some kind of an implement. So we said you can't do it because wood is only supposed to be burnt, we said before. Right? Not to be an Oud. That's what Rashi says. Why you're not allowed to use it for stoking the fire, whatever. Right? The reason is because the rule that we said before, Chazal have not given wood to be used
only for burning.
Only for burning, only for firewood. That's their only heter for using just a piece of wood on Yom Tov. And then Rashi says, but we have to be honest about this. Unless it became a kli. It doesn't even say you made it into a kli. It became a kli. So if I went in Erev Yom Tov and I took it out of the woodshed and I started using it as my stoker or whatever, then it's fine, because it became a kli before Yom Tov. And that's even according to Rabbi Yehuda.
So it has to be a kli in order to use it.
That's right. It has to have a function before Yom Tov. That means that you intend to use it on Yom Tov for that function. That's according to Rabbi Yehuda how you can avoid the problem of muksa. Okay, Oud Shenishbar, however, and Rashi says what we said, Baruch Hashem,
Oud Shenishbar
Yom Tov. Rashi says, we're only talking about Yom Tov, because if it broke before Yom Tov, then you have the other heter, that he was already thinking of using it for firewood before Yom Tov. The problem is if it broke on Yom Tov and suddenly switched from being a regular Oud to a firewood,
Shadi Maya Leshumra.
Now he told his shamas, the Gemora says, how could he have said that you have to be worried about the oud and all of that, which shows he holds like Rabbi Yehuda. But he said to his shamas to burn, to shadi me'el l'shunra, that he could take the innards and throw them to the cat.
Hishlich b'nei ma'im.
Hashlich. That's the command form, right?
Throw
the intestines to the cats, right? And Rashi says, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, that would have been usher, l'taltalo, to even move the entrails. Forget about throwing it to the cat, just to move it. And certainly, l'seiso, l'chatul.
What's that?
Now, this is an interesting point in Rashi. What's wrong with using the entrails, right? What's so bad about it? If they're really only for cats, so call it cat food. What's wrong with that? No. This is an interesting Rashi. The me'esmol, because yesterday, how did we look at this? Muchan la'adam. These entrails were called people food yesterday. Now, it's interesting. Not because entrails are good for people to eat. Most people don't like eating those entrails. But yesterday they were what? Part of the cat, part of the duck. Right. You could say, so here's where you could say they were edible because they hadn't yet started to decompose. Right. We said, in the end, we said we're talking about ones that had started to decompose. They started to smell. So you could say that in the Havamina we thought that they were not decomposed yet, and that's what we're saying. No, they had started to decompose. But I'm thinking that even you could say better. We were thinking we shechted it on Yom Tov, which means Erev Yom Tov, you know what it was? It was part of the duck. So those entrails were actually called people food. Because it's part of a duck, which is people food. Velo, the klavim. Now that's interesting. So yesterday it was people food and not dog food. Okay, or cat food. And now he says, now he brings a proof from somewhere else, the Ka'amar, because we have somebody saying about the Nevela, in lo haisa Nevela me'erev Shabbos asura. Right? Remember about this case, if we had an animal and now it died on Yom Tov, can you feed it to the dogs? Only according to Rabbi Shimon. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it had to have died the day before. Because if it was not dead the day before, then yesterday was people food.
You can also feed it with the
And now you want to feed it to the dogs and make it dog food. You can't just switch it like that in the middle of Yom Tov.
You can also feed it to the goyim, which is part of that sugya.
Okay, but I'm talking about just in terms of muksa. The interesting thing is that if yesterday it was people food, right? So when Shabbos or Yom Tov started, it was muksa or not?
It was
not muksa, right? But to switch from being people food to being dog food, the one who holds muksa would say it's usher, because you're switching its status in the middle of Shabbos. You can't do that. That's as bad as saying something was in the beginning muksa, now you want to switch it to being non-muksa because it's usable. It's the same problem according to Rabbi Yehuda. It wasn't in the plan. So therefore it's already designated for one thing, you can't use it for this other thing. Right? It's a big chiddush in the halachas of muksa. Because I thought muksa was just something that started Shabbos or Yom Tov as being completely not usable, and now it became usable, you want to use it, and Rabbi Yehuda says, no, sorry. Started as muksa, it's always muksa. Here, what didn't start as muksa? Started as people food. That's what Rashi said, it was mucham la'adam. So there's this whole sugya, I don't think we got to it yet, which is called mucham la'adam. Is that also mucham la'klavim? Or is it not? And here is saying, according to Rabbi Yehuda, not. Started Shabbos as being people food, and now all of a sudden, because you shechted the duck, and now you have entrails in front of you, that's good only for giving to the cat, that you can't do, if you will, like Rabbi Yehuda. So we thought these possibly like Rabbi Shimon, we had to say no, really these were starting to decompose yesterday, meaning it shechted it yesterday.
Rabbi